She turned down a prince, accepted a duke, and accidentally made the most dangerous cat in the kingdom fall hopelessly in love with her. The kingdom of Bellaflora adored grand love stories. Poets wrote them. Painters immortalized them. Musicians filled moonlit streets with songs about them. Unfortunately, none of those stories had prepared Lady Seraphine for the disaster currently marching toward her. "They're coming," her maid whispered the words as though announcing the arrival of a dragon. Seraphine sighed without looking up from the warm cinnamon milk she was enjoying on her balcony. "I know. They're carrying flowers. I know. A lot of flowers. I definitely know." The young noblewoman slowly placed her teacup onto its saucer. She wasn't frightened. She wasn't nervous. She was exhausted. Not because she disliked romance. Quite the opposite. She adored romance. She adored moonlit dances, secret letters, lantern festivals, soft music drifting through castle gardens, holding paws beneath tables while pretending nobody noticed. What she did not adore was being treated like a prize instead of a person. The enormous palace gates opened. 3 elegant carriages rolled inside, one after another. The first belonged to Prince Rowan. The second belonged to Duke Caspian. The third, Seraphine groaned. "Oh no! What?" The Marquis came too. Her maid peeked over the balcony. "With musicians." Of course he did. Seraphine wasn't royalty. She didn't need to be. Her family protected nearly half the kingdom's enchanted forests. Every healing flower, every magical spring, every ancient crystal grove, all of them flourished under House Ashvale. Because of that, every ambitious noble wanted to marry into the family. Not for love, for influence. Unfortunately, Seraphine knew it. She could always tell. Compliments aimed at her family title instead of her smile. Questions about estates before hobbies. Praise for wealth before kindness. It became terribly boring. A gentle breeze played through her long, silky fur. She adjusted the pastel lavender ribbon, tying part of it behind one ear. Her emerald eyes drifted toward the gardens below. Everything looked peaceful. Pastel roses, crystal fountains, cherry blossoms floating through warm afternoon sunlight. Exactly the sort of afternoon she'd hoped to spend reading. Instead, someone below shouted dramatically, "Lady Seraphine!" She closed her eyes. "Here we go." Prince Rowan stepped from his carriage first. Golden cream-colored fur. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. Perfect everything. He looked like every fairy tale illustration ever painted. He bowed deeply. "You look radiant today." "Thank you. I commissioned 77 roses. I counted. I had them imported. I guessed. They only bloom beneath moonlight." "That's impressive." Her answers remained perfectly polite, perfectly measured, perfectly impossible to continue a conversation with. The prince cleared his throat. "I wish to ask whether—" Another voice interrupted. "Your Highness." Duke Caspian climbed from the second carriage. Tall, confident, well-dressed. Soft silver blue coat beneath a navy overcoat embroidered with tiny constellations. "You arrived early." "I was invited." "So was I." "I know." Neither smiled. Seraphine quietly picked up another cookie. Apparently, this afternoon had become a competition. Wonderful. Then, music exploded across the courtyard. Trumpets, violins, drums. Her ears flattened. Oh, the Marquis had arrived. He emerged carrying an enormous bouquet almost bigger than himself. "My lady." "No, I haven't proposed yet." "I know. So why no?" "You looked like you were about to." "Fair." For 20 extremely long minutes, the 3 noblemen politely argued over who deserved to escort Seraphine to the upcoming Moon Blossom Festival. She listened, sipped tea, finished 2 pastries, fed tiny enchanted sparrows crumbs from her plate. Not once did she interrupt. Eventually, Prince Rowan smiled hopefully. "Lady Seraphine." "Yes. Whom would you like accompanying you?" Silence settled across the courtyard. 3 hopeful faces. One answer. She smiled warmly. "I'd rather go alone." The silence somehow became even louder. Far beyond the castle walls, someone laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly, just genuinely, as though he'd witnessed something wonderfully unexpected. Hidden beneath flowering trees, a tall traveler adjusted the hood covering most of his face. Only a pair of striking sapphire eyes remained visible. "So," he murmured to himself, "she's real." He'd heard countless stories about House Ashvale's daughter. Beautiful, brilliant, impossible to impress. He'd assumed they were exaggerated. Now, watching her politely reject 3 of the kingdom's most eligible bachelors without embarrassing any of them, he realized the rumors hadn't gone far enough. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. This should be interesting. Without another word, the mysterious traveler disappeared into the pastel forest. Unaware, Lady Seraphine had just caught the attention of the only cat in the kingdom who had absolutely no intention of courting her. Or so he believed. The following morning arrived wrapped in soft pastel sunshine. Golden rays spilled across Bellaflora's castle gardens, turning every dew-covered flower into tiny sparkling jewels. Usually, this was Seraphine's favorite hour. No nobles, no speeches, no bouquets large enough to block the sun. Just birdsong, fresh pastries, and peace. She balanced a wicker basket over one arm as she wandered into the Royal Botanical Gardens. Inside rested tiny jars of honey, warm bread, and herbs she gathered herself. Not because she had to, because she genuinely enjoyed it. The elderly gardeners adored her for it. "My lady!" Old Master Bramble waved enthusiastically. You remembered my favorite tea leaves. Seraphine smiled. You remembered my favorite strawberry tarts. Fair trade. They laughed together. She preferred conversations like these. No hidden motives. No political games. Just kindness. Several younger noble women wandered through the gardens nearby. One whispered, "There she is. The Duke visited yesterday. So did the Prince. And the Marquis. I heard she refused all three." Impossible. No one refuses Prince Rowan. Seraphine pretended not to hear. She had long ago discovered gossip eventually grew bored when ignored. Usually. Crunch. Someone stepped onto the stone path behind her. Not hurried. Not hesitant. Just calm. She glanced over her shoulder. A traveler stood a few paces away. Tall. Broad shoulders beneath a charcoal traveling cloak. Simple leather boots. No noble crest. No expensive jewelry. Just a weathered satchel slung over one shoulder. His hood shadowed most of his face. Only bright sapphire eyes met hers. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Then, he looked at the herb basket. You picked moon basil too early. Seraphine blinked. Excuse me. The leaves. He pointed casually. They're sweeter after sunrise finishes warming them. She looked down. You're right. Master Bramble gasped. Someone besides Lady Seraphine noticed. The traveler shrugged. My grandmother taught me. The old gardener clapped excitedly. Young man. Yes. If you're so clever. He pointed toward a struggling flower bed. Help. The traveler sighed dramatically. I knew kindness would have consequences. Seraphine laughed. A real laugh. Soft. Bright. The mysterious stranger looked toward her. He smiled. Not because she'd laughed. Because he hadn't expected it to sound so genuine. Together, the three spent nearly an hour tending flowers. No titles. No introductions. No dramatic declarations. Simply conversation. You planted lavender beside jasmine. Seraphine nodded. The bees prefer it. They do. You've studied gardens. I've wandered enough to learn. You travel alone. Usually. Weren't you lonely? He thought for a moment. Sometimes. His answer was honest. Simple. Unpolished. She liked that. Nearby, a pair of noble ladies watched from beneath a marble archway. Who is he? I've never seen him. Did Lady Seraphine invite him? I don't think so. One narrowed her eyes. They've been talking for nearly an hour. Back in the gardens, the traveler wiped dirt from his gloves. I should leave. So soon. I've already stolen enough of your morning. It wasn't stolen, she answered before thinking. His ears twitched slightly. So, he said, I'll call it borrowed. Just as he turned, a familiar voice echoed across the gardens. There you are. Prince Rowan. Of course. Behind him walked Duke Caspian. And the Marquis. Again. Seraphine silently wondered if the universe simply enjoyed teasing her. Prince Rowan stopped. His warm smile faltered. Who's this? The traveler answered before Seraphine could. A gardener. Master Bramble nearly inhaled an entire mint leaf. A gardener. The traveler nodded calmly. Today, anyway. The old gardener caught on immediately. Best one I've hired all week. I've been employed for exactly 48 minutes. Record-breaking. The Marquis frowned suspiciously. I don't remember seeing you around. I don't remember seeing you either. That's because I don't work here. Oh, neither do I. The Marquis blinked. What? Even Duke Caspian struggled not to smile. Prince Rowan studied the traveler carefully. There was something strangely familiar about him. Not his clothes. Not his voice. Something deeper. Like recognizing a melody without remembering where he'd heard it. Seraphine broke the silence. Would anyone like tea? 3 noblemen answered instantly. Yes. The traveler looked toward the castle gates. I should really. You too. She smiled. If you're borrowing my morning, you might as well borrow lunch. He hesitated, long enough for hope to flicker inside her. Then, I'd like that. An hour later, the castle terrace overlooked rolling pastel hills painted with wildflowers. Silver teapots gleamed beneath climbing roses. Fresh pastries filled elegant stands. Everyone took their seats. Prince Rowan beside Seraphine. Duke Caspian opposite her. The Marquis somehow ended up beside the desserts. The traveler chose the farthest chair from everyone. Interesting. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. Not even her. Conversation drifted politely. Until the Marquis puffed out his chest. I recently won the Royal Archery Tournament. Congratulations. Prince Rowan smiled. I've won it 4 years consecutively. Oh. Duke Caspian added casually. My family sponsors it. Oh. Silence. All 3 turned toward the traveler. And you? He calmly buttered another piece of bread. I once lost an argument to a goose. Seraphine laughed so suddenly she nearly spilled her tea. What? The goose won. How? It bit me. That's embarrassing. It was a very confident goose. For several seconds, neither of them stopped laughing. The 3 noblemen exchanged confused glances. Why? Why did that make her laugh? As lunch came to an end, the traveler rose. Thank you for the meal. You never told me your name. He paused. just long enough to make her curious. Then he smiled. You'll hear it soon enough. Before anyone could ask another question, he walked away through the gardens, disappearing beyond the flowering arches. Seraphine watched until he vanished from sight. For reasons she couldn't explain, the garden suddenly felt a little quieter. And somewhere beyond the castle walls, the mysterious traveler smiled to himself. The first meeting had gone far better than expected. The only problem, he hadn't expected to enjoy her company quite so much. And that could become very dangerous. For the next 3 days, Seraphine found herself thinking about someone she'd only met once. Not constantly, not dramatically, just occasionally, usually while tending flowers, or watching butterflies drift across the palace gardens, or whenever she passed the chair he'd chosen, the one furthest from everyone else. She still hadn't learned his name. Oddly, that bothered her. Meanwhile, the mysterious traveler had become the capital's favorite rumor. No family crest, no servants, no carriage. Yet Lady Seraphine invited him to lunch. Who is he? No one knew. Least of all, the 3 noble cats determined to discover the answer. Prince Rowan had investigators discreetly asking questions. Duke Caspian quietly questioned merchants. Even the Marquis attempted detective work. Although he mostly questioned bakers, his reasoning was simple. If I were mysterious, I'd eventually get hungry. The annual Moon Blossom Masquerade arrived at last. It was Bellaflora's most anticipated evening. Thousands of enchanted blossoms floated through the air like glowing stars. Crystal lanterns hovered above marble walkways. Pastel pink, lavender, and sapphire ribbons fluttered gently in the warm evening breeze. Every guest wore an elegant mask. The ballroom shimmered beneath chandeliers crafted from enchanted glass flowers. Tonight, names mattered less than moments. Seraphine wore a flowing pastel midnight blue gown embroidered with tiny silver blossoms. Her long, silky fur had been loosely braided with delicate pearl ribbons. Her mask resembled butterfly wings painted with soft violet accents. Elegant, graceful, timeless. When she entered, conversations paused. Not because she was the most elaborately dressed. Quite the opposite. Her effortless elegance outshone extravagance. Prince Rowan approached first. My lady, good evening. You look wonderful. Thank you. I reserved the first dance. You assumed. I hoped. She smiled kindly. I appreciate that. Which wasn't exactly a yes. Across the ballroom, Duke Caspian watched. His younger sister nudged him. You'll lose. I don't lose. You've been standing there for 10 minutes. I'm observing. You're staring. I am strategically observing. She rolled her eyes. Right. The orchestra began. Strings floated through the grand hall. Couples stepped gracefully onto the polished marble floor. Prince Rowan extended a paw. May I? Before Seraphine could answer, a loud crash echoed near the dessert tables. Everyone turned. The Marquis stood frozen. A magnificent chocolate fountain leaned dangerously sideways. I can explain. No one believed him. While servants rescued the desserts, Seraphine quietly slipped onto a moonlit balcony. She loved celebrations. She simply preferred admiring them from a peaceful distance. The cool evening breeze brushed against her fur. Somewhere below, water trickled softly through marble fountains. She exhaled. Finally, quiet. You escaped too. She turned. The traveler leaned casually against the balcony railing. Tonight, he wore a simple midnight blue mask. No cloak, no hood, still no family crest, only those unmistakable sapphire eyes. She smiled before she realized she was smiling. You came. I was invited. I don't remember inviting you. You looked disappointed when I left. She blinked. Did I? A little. She laughed. I should learn to hide that better. I hope you don't. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was comfortable. Rare. Inside, the orchestra shifted into a slower melody. The traveler looked toward the ballroom. You've avoided dancing. I have. Why? She smiled faintly. Because everyone asking wants to impress everyone watching. He nodded. I noticed. I like dancing. She admitted quietly. I just don't enjoy performing. His eyes softened. I understand. He stepped away from the railing. Extended one paw. What if? No audience. He nodded toward the palace gardens. A quiet stone courtyard lay beyond the balcony. Empty. Bathed in moonlight. Hidden by flowering hedges. No spectators. No gossip. Just music drifting gently through open windows. Seraphine looked at his offered paw. Then at the empty courtyard. Then back at him. That sounds much nicer. Moments later, they stood beneath blooming moonflowers. The orchestra echoed softly from inside the palace, far enough away to feel private, close enough to hear every note. He bowed, not dramatically, simply, respectfully. May I have this dance? This time, she didn't hesitate. Yes. His paw was warm, his movements confident without being controlling. He guided rather than led. She followed without feeling pulled. Every step felt easy, natural, comfortable. Neither tried to impress the other. Neither needed to. Inside the ballroom, Prince Rowan noticed something. "Where's Lady Seraphine?" Duke Caspian looked around. "She was here." The Marquis pointed dramatically toward the gardens. "I saw blue. That could be anyone. There are many blue dresses." "True. Back beneath the moonflowers." Seraphine laughed again. "You've done this before." "A few times." "You're very good. I had an excellent teacher." "Your grandmother?" He smiled. "My mother. You miss her." The words escaped before she could stop them. He became very still. "Yes." It wasn't a dramatic confession. Just honest. She squeezed his paw gently. "I'm sorry." He looked at her. Really looked. No noblewoman had ever responded to him that way before. Not with curiosity. Not with sympathy. Simply kindness. For a heartbeat, the world seemed to disappear. The music. The lanterns. The festival. Everything. It was just the two of them beneath glowing flowers. Closer than either had realized. His gaze drifted to her eyes. Then, briefly, to her lips. She noticed. Her heart skipped once. Only once. Neither moved. Neither spoke. The distance between them became almost unbearably small. "Found them." The Marquis' voice exploded across the gardens. Both of them jumped apart so quickly they nearly stumbled. The Marquis burst through the hedge triumphantly. "I knew it." Prince Rowan arrived seconds later. Duke Caspian just behind him. The traveler quietly sighed. Perfect timing. Seraphine covered a laugh. The Marquis looked between them. "Were you dancing?" "Yes." "Without us?" "Also yes." Prince Rowan frowned politely. "I thought the first dance belonged to me." Seraphine tilted her head. "You reserved it." "Yes. I never accepted." The prince blinked. "That's technically true." Duke Caspian folded his arms. "And who exactly are you?" Every eye turned toward the traveler. He remained perfectly calm. Then, castle trumpets sounded from the grand ballroom. A royal herald stepped onto the palace steps. "Hear ye!" Guests gradually fell silent. "Their Majesties welcome." A brief pause. His Royal Highness Prince Lucien of Everwinter. Silence. Every noble turned toward the palace entrance. The traveler slowly closed his eyes. "Well," he muttered. "So much for staying anonymous." He reached up, removed his mask, and looked directly at Seraphine. "I suppose," he said with a sheepish smile, "this is where I finally tell you my name." The palace courtyard fell silent. Not the ordinary kind of silence. The kind that swept through hundreds of guests all at once. Lanterns drifted overhead. Music faded. Even the fountain seemed quieter. Prince Rowan stared. Duke Caspian blinked twice. The Marquis dropped an entire cream puff onto his shoe. "You're kidding." The traveler smiled apologetically. "I'm afraid not." He reached up, untied the midnight blue mask, and lowered it. A collective gasp echoed through the courtyard. It really was him. Prince Lucien, the second prince of the kingdom of Everwinter. The kingdom directly north of Bellaflora. A land famous for crystalline lakes, snowy forests, and scholars instead of soldiers. Unlike his older brother, Lucien wasn't known for attending royal gatherings. He disliked politics, avoided ceremonies, rarely appeared in portraits. Rumor claimed he'd spent more time exploring villages than living inside castles. Some believed he had no interest in becoming king. Others believed he was simply impossible to predict. Looking at him now, Seraphine understood why. Prince Rowan recovered first. "Your Highness." Lucien inclined his head politely. "Rowan, you might have mentioned who you were." Lucien shrugged. "You never asked." The Marquis opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "That's actually fair." Seraphine crossed her arms. "So." Lucien smiled. "So, you let me think you were a gardener." "I was gardening." "You let me invite you to lunch." "I accepted." "You let me lose an argument over Moon Basil." "You were gracious in defeat." She stared at him. Then, to everyone's surprise, she laughed. A bright, genuine laugh that echoed through the moonlit courtyard. Lucien found himself smiling again. There it was. That laugh. He'd missed it, and he'd only heard it twice. The royal herald hurried over. "Your Highness, there you are. The king and queen of Bellaflora have been searching everywhere." Lucien looked mildly guilty. "Already? You disappeared 3 hours ago." "I got distracted." The herald looked toward Seraphine. "Clearly." Within minutes, the ballroom buzzed louder than ever. Every conversation revolved around exactly one topic. The mysterious traveler was a prince. "I told you." "No, you said he was secretly a baker." "I changed my theory." The king of Bellaflora greeted Lucien warmly. "You vanished again." "I know. You left your royal escort. They walked too fast." The queen chuckled. "He hasn't changed. Not even slightly." Seraphine watched from across the ballroom. Interesting. No one seemed surprised by his behavior. If anything, they seemed accustomed to it. She'd expected polished perfection. Instead, she found someone who preferred gardens over grand entrances. Someone who admitted losing arguments to geese. Someone who'd spent an hour planting flowers without mentioning he was royalty. Somehow, knowing he was a prince changed almost nothing. Lucien excused himself from the royal table, ignoring several nobles eager to introduce themselves, ignoring ambitious parents steering eligible daughters toward him. ignoring every carefully rehearsed conversation. Instead, he walked directly toward Seraphine. The room noticed. Of course it did. My lady. She tilted her head. Your Highness. He made a face. Please don't. What? Your Highness. But you are. I know. I've only just found that out. So pretend you still don't. She smiled mischievously. I don't think protocol works that way. I was hoping. They wandered toward one of the palace balconies, far enough away for privacy, close enough to hear the orchestra. Lucien rested both paws against the marble railing. You aren't angry. I considered it. And you looked genuinely happy while planting flowers. So, it would have been difficult to stay angry. He chuckled softly. I appreciate that. Below, the city shimmered beneath thousands of floating lanterns. Children laughed in distant streets. Music drifted across rooftops. For several peaceful moments, neither spoke. Finally, Lucien broke the silence. I've been hearing stories about you for years. You have. The Duchess who rejected half the kingdom. I've rejected exactly 3. So far. She gave him a playful look. Are you planning to become number 4? He laughed. I hadn't planned on courting anyone. No. No. What changed? Lucien looked toward the lantern-filled sky, then back at her. You laughed. She blinked. That's all. You laughed because something was funny. Most people do. Not around royalty. He sighed quietly. They laugh because they think they should. They compliment paintings they don't like. They agree with jokes that aren't funny. They pretend. His voice grew softer. They're always trying to impress someone. He looked directly into her emerald eyes. You never tried. Seraphine's ears twitched. No grand declaration. No rehearsed poetry. Just honesty. Somehow, that felt infinitely more romantic. Behind one of the marble columns, 3 familiar figures watched. The Marquis whispered dramatically. They're smiling. Prince Rowan sighed. They're talking. Duke Caspian folded his arms. They're comfortable. None of them liked that observation. Not one bit. Just then, a palace attendant hurried toward the royal family, looking nervous. Your Majesty. The king's smile faded. What is it? A carriage has just arrived from Everwinter. Lucien frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. The attendant swallowed. It's... Your older brother. Lucien's relaxed posture disappeared instantly. The Crown Prince. Yes, Your Highness. The cheerful warmth in Lucien's eyes cooled. Seraphine noticed immediately. You don't seem pleased. Lucien forced a small smile. My brother never travels without a reason. At the palace entrance, the massive carriage doors slowly opened. A tall figure stepped into the lantern light. Elegant, immaculately dressed. Calm. Every noble instinctively lowered their voice. Even from across the courtyard, the newcomer carried an undeniable presence. His icy blue eyes swept across the ballroom, until they stopped on Seraphine. Then, very slowly, a faint smile appeared. Not warm, not cruel, simply interested. Lucien's expression darkened. Quietly, almost under his breath, he murmured, This is going to be a problem. The grand ballroom grew noticeably colder, not because the evening breeze had changed, because Crown Prince Alaric of Everwinter had entered the room. He wasn't intimidating in the obvious way. He didn't shout. He didn't glare. He didn't need to. He simply walked with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to being obeyed. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. The polished marble floor reflected the silver embroidery of his midnight coat as he crossed the ballroom. Nobles instinctively stepped aside, not out of fear, out of respect. Lucien sighed. I was hoping he'd stay home. Seraphine glanced toward him. You don't sound happy to see your brother. I love him. But every conversation with Alaric somehow turns into a life lesson. She smiled. Older brother? The oldest. Ah, you understand. I have cousins. Lucien chuckled. Close enough. Alaric reached them. For a heartbeat. Neither brother spoke. Then, Lucien smiled first. It's good to see you. Alaric's serious expression softened. Only slightly. It is good to see you too. Without warning, he pulled Lucien into a brief hug. The surrounding nobles looked stunned. The famously stoic crown prince. Hot people. Apparently only one. You disappeared again. I did. You dismissed your royal escort. They were slowing me down. They reported you missing. I wasn't missing. You were to them. Lucien scratched the back of his neck. Fair. Alaric finally turned toward Seraphine. His posture remained perfectly composed. My lady. She curtsied gracefully. Your Highness. I believe my brother owes you an apology. Lucien blinked. For what? For allowing you to believe he was merely a wandering gardener. Seraphine looked between them. Then, she smiled. I rather like the gardener. Lucien's ears twitched. Alaric noticed. Interesting. Very interesting. I've rarely seen him smile this much. Alaric remarked calmly. Lucien nearly choked on absolutely nothing. I smile. You tolerate smiling. I smiled yesterday. You smirked. They're practically cousins. Seraphine covered a laugh. Across the ballroom, Prince Rowan watched silently. The Marquis whispered, I don't like this. Duke Caspian nodded. I've never seen Lucien embarrassed. He keeps looking at her. And she keeps laughing. That's worse. Alaric accepted a glass of sparkling berry nectar from a passing servant. He studied Seraphine thoughtfully. So, my brother has been speaking about flowers. Lucien froze. Brother. He mentioned moon basil. Brother. He also explained why bees prefer lavender borders. Please stop. And he has somehow developed very strong opinions regarding cinnamon pastries. Lucien buried his face in one paw. The Marquis gasped dramatically. He's been talking about you. Prince Rowan quietly looked away. Even Duke Caspian couldn't hide a small grin. Seraphine folded her arms playfully. So, you've been discussing pastries? Lucien groaned. I walked directly into that. You certainly did. For the first time all evening, the conversation felt wonderfully normal. Not political. Not strategic. Just comfortable. Even Alaric seemed amused. The orchestra began another elegant waltz. Couples gradually returned to the dance floor. Lantern light shimmered across polished marble. Lucien looked toward the musicians. Then toward Seraphine. Then away again. He hesitated. Twice. Alaric noticed immediately. Ask. Lucien looked horrified. I wasn't. You were. I was thinking. You've been thinking for 6 minutes. I can think. You overthink. I absolutely do not. Alaric raised one eyebrow. Lucien sighed dramatically. Fine. He turned back toward Seraphine. Would you? His confidence suddenly disappeared. Would you like another dance? She looked at him for a long moment. Just long enough for him to wonder if he'd imagined everything. Then, a warm smile spread across her face. I would. This time, they didn't leave the ballroom. They danced beneath hundreds of floating crystal lanterns. The orchestra played a slower melody. Guests naturally made space around them. Not because they were royalty. Because they looked happy. Lucien wasn't trying to impress anyone. He forgot about perfect posture. Forgot about watching nobles. Forgot about appearances. He only watched her. She noticed. So, she teased softly. You've stopped looking at your feet. I was looking at the floor. You were nervous. I was calculating. The tiles. The possibility of embarrassing myself. She laughed again. There it is. What? My favorite sound. The words escaped before he could stop them. Silence. His ears slowly lowered. I said that out loud? You did. I'm usually much smoother. Were you? No. She smiled. I didn't think so. Nita looked away. Their paws remained lightly joined. The distance between them seemed smaller than before. Nita rushed it. Nita wanted to. Sometimes. The anticipation was sweeter than the destination. High above the ballroom, Queen Eleanor of Bellaflora watched from the royal balcony beside King Orion. They danced well together. The king nodded thoughtfully. They don't seem to realize everyone else has disappeared. The queen smiled knowingly. They're only seeing each other. And they were right. For Lucien, the orchestra had faded into the background. For Seraphine, the ballroom no longer felt crowded. It felt peaceful. As the music ended, they stopped. Neither immediately released the other's paw. For one lingering heartbeat, the entire world seemed to pause. Then, oh! The Marquis yelled from across the ballroom. They're still holding paws. Nearly every noble looked over. Lucien immediately let go. Seraphine covered her face, laughing. Even Alaric pinched the bridge of his nose. I almost forgot he was here. The Marquis smiled proudly. I have excellent timing. No, Prince Rowan muttered. You really don't. Just as the laughter settled, the palace doors burst open. A royal messenger hurried inside, breathing heavily. He dropped to one knee before both kings. Your Majesties, there has been. He swallowed hard. A theft. The ballroom fell silent. The Starheart crystal, the kingdom's most treasured magical relic, has disappeared. The laughter vanished. The orchestra fell silent. Even the floating lanterns seemed to hang motionless in the air. The royal messenger remained on one knee. His breathing was uneven. The Starheart crystal is gone. No one spoke, because everyone understood what that meant. The Starheart crystal wasn't merely a priceless jewel. It was the heart of Bellaflora's ancient magic. Every enchanted garden, every healing spring, every moon blossom that glowed after sunset, every crystal lantern floating peacefully above the kingdom, all of them drew strength from the Starheart. Without it, the kingdom's magic would slowly fade. King Orion stood. When? Less than 15 minutes ago, Your Majesty. How? We don't know. The vault? Locked. The guards. Still at their posts. The alarms. They never sounded. A murmur spread through the ballroom. Impossible. The royal vault had never been breached. Prince Rowan stepped forward. I'd like to inspect the vault. So would I, Duke Caspian added. The Marquis puffed out his chest. I once solved the mystery of who kept stealing my breakfast pastries. Everyone looked at him. It was me. He paused. I kept forgetting. Lucien couldn't help himself. A laugh escaped. The tension in the room eased, if only for a moment. Even King Orion smiled. Thank you, Marquis. I'm here to help. Within minutes, a small group made their way beneath the palace. King Orion, Queen Eleanor, Prince Rowan, Duke Caspian, Prince Lucien, Crown Prince Alaric, Seraphine, and the captain of the royal guard. Torchlight flickered across ancient stone walls. The deeper they descended, the quieter everything became. At the end of a long corridor stood an enormous silver door. It was still closed, still locked. The captain inserted the royal key. The heavy mechanism clicked. The doors slowly opened. Everyone held their breath. The chamber was untouched. Gold remained stacked neatly. Ancient scrolls rested inside glass cases. Ceremonial crowns gleamed beneath crystal lights. Nothing appeared disturbed. Except the center pedestal. Empty. The Starheart crystal had vanished. Lucien slowly walked around the pedestal. He crouched, studied the polished floor. Interesting. Very interesting. What do you see? Seraphine asked quietly. He pointed. Nothing. She blinked. Nothing. No footprints. The floor is polished. Exactly. He looked around the room. No dust disturbed. No scratches. No damaged lock. No broken enchantments. Alaric nodded thoughtfully. So, Lucien finished the sentence. The thief never actually entered the room. Prince Rowan frowned. That's impossible. Lucien stood. Usually. Seraphine slowly circled the pedestal. Her emerald eyes narrowed. Everyone else had been looking down. She looked up, toward the vaulted ceiling. Something shimmered, barely visible. A single silver thread, thin as spider silk, stretching across the room. Lucien. He followed her gaze. Well. He smiled. That's clever. The captain squinted. I don't understand. Lucien pointed upward. The thread. It isn't ordinary silk. Seraphine stepped closer. It changes color. It reacts to magic. Lucien nodded. The crystal wasn't carried through the door. It was. He followed the thread toward a tiny ventilation opening near the ceiling. Lifted. Alaric folded his arms. Someone planned this for months. Years. Lucien corrected. The thread would have needed to be placed long before tonight. King Orion looked grim. So the thief knew our palace. Extremely well. Just then, Seraphine noticed something else. A tiny object resting beside the empty pedestal. She carefully picked it up. It looked like a flower petal. Except, it wasn't. The delicate shape was carved from translucent crystal. On its surface, someone had etched a tiny crescent moon. Lucien's expression changed instantly. You recognize it? Asked Seraphine. He nodded slowly. I hoped I'd never see one again. Alaric looked equally serious. The Moon Veil Society. The captain frowned. I've never heard of them. You weren't supposed to. Alaric's voice was calm. They're not an army. They're not assassins. They're collectors. Seraphine tilted her head. Collectors. Lucien looked at the empty pedestal. They don't steal money. They steal things that should never be owned. The room grew quiet. King Orion spoke first. Why take the Starheart? Lucien didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked toward the crystal petal in Seraphine's paw. His voice became almost a whisper. Because someone is trying to wake something that should have remained asleep. A chill swept through the chamber. No one laughed this time. Not even the Marquis. Somewhere, far beyond the palace walls, a hooded figure stood atop an ancient cliff overlooking Bellaflora. The Starheart crystal glowed faintly inside an ornate case. The figure carefully placed the crystal into a stone altar covered in vines. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, deep beneath the mountain, something answered. A low, ancient, resonant heartbeat. Thump. The hooded figure smiled. At last, the first seal is broken. The heartbeat echoed only once. Then, silence. The hooded figure closed the ancient stone altar. The glowing vines slowly curled around the Starheart crystal, hiding it once more. One remains, the figure whispered, and then no one will be able to stop us. A gust of wind swept across the cliff. When it settled, the stranger had vanished, back beneath Bellaflora Castle. Nobody moved. King Orion finally broke the silence. If what you're saying is true. He looked toward Lucien. Then this wasn't a robbery. Lucien shook his head. No, this was the opening move. The captain of the royal guard frowned. Then we send soldiers. Alaric answered calmly. To where? The captain hesitated. We don't know. Exactly. King Orion turned toward Lucien. What would you do? Lucien looked at the crystal petal in Seraphine's paw. I'd ask where this came from. Everyone looked at Seraphine. She examined the delicate crystal more closely. It's beautifully made. She gently traced the tiny crescent moon engraved on its surface. Wait! She tilted it toward the torchlight. There are tiny markings. Lucien stepped beside her. They aren't decorations. They're writing. The queen adjusted her spectacles. I can't read them. Neither could the captain. Nor Prince Rowan. Nor Duke Caspian. The Marquis squinted dramatically. I can. Everyone looked at him hopefully. He smiled. I have absolutely no idea what it says. The room collectively sighed. Seraphine slowly rotated the crystal petal. The symbols shifted, almost as though they weren't carved into the crystal, but floating inside it. Her emerald eyes widened. It's responding. Lucien leaned closer. To what? She looked up. To me. Without warning. The petal floated gently from her paw. Everyone instinctively stepped back. It hovered in the air, glowing with a soft pastel silver light. The tiny symbols rearranged themselves. Then, a thin beam of shimmering light stretched across the chamber wall. Like a brush painting across stone. An image appeared. Not words. A map. The chamber filled with astonished whispers. Ancient forests. Crystal rivers. Snow-covered mountains. Then, one location slowly began glowing brighter than the rest. A valley, hidden deep within Bellaflora's oldest woodland. Lucien stared. I know that place. You do. It's called Whispering Hollow. King Orion frowned. No one's lived there for centuries. Alaric nodded. Because nobody can find it. The glowing map slowly faded. The crystal petal gently drifted back into Seraphine's waiting paw. The room became quiet once again. King Orion looked around the chamber. It seems our destination has chosen itself. Prince Rowan stepped forward immediately. I'll prepare my knights. So will I, Duke Caspian added. The captain nodded. I can have 50 soldiers ready before dawn. Lucien exchanged a glance with Alaric. Neither looked convinced. You disagree, King Orion observed. Lucien nodded carefully. If the Moonveil Society truly wanted war, they would have attacked. They didn't. They stole. They hid. They left a clue. Seraphine looked thoughtful. You think they wanted us to follow? Lucien smiled. I think they expected someone to. The king's expression darkened. A trap. Almost certainly. Silence settled over the chamber. Finally, Seraphine spoke. Then we don't send an army. Everyone turned toward her. If someone's expecting soldiers, she smiled thoughtfully. Perhaps we shouldn't arrive like soldiers. The Marquis raised one paw enthusiastically. I volunteer to disguise myself as a shrub. Prince Rowan sighed. Why? So no one suspects me. That's exactly why they'd suspect you. Oh, right. Even Alaric laughed. A genuine laugh. Short, but unmistakably real. Lucien stared. Brother. What? You laughed. I occasionally do. I've seen comets more often. The tension eased once more. King Orion smiled faintly. It seems this company works well together. Later that evening, the royal library remained warmly lit while the rest of the palace slept. Ancient books covered enormous oak tables. Maps stretched across polished desks. Scrolls lay unrolled in careful rows. Seraphine searched through botanical journals. Lucien flicked through old travel records. Alaric studied historical accounts. Prince Rowan organized expedition supplies. Duke Caspian compared routes. Even the Marquis attempted to help. 5 minutes later, he accidentally climbed a rolling library ladder, which promptly rolled away, leaving him stranded 12 feet above the floor. Little assistance. Lucien looked up. How long have you been up there? I don't know. I've reflected on many life choices. Seraphine couldn't stop laughing. Neither could Lucien. He looked at her. She looked back. For just a moment, everything else disappeared. Again, Alaric noticed. So did Queen Eleanor. The queen quietly walked beside him. They're rather obvious. Alaric nodded. They don't know yet. No. But everyone else does. Hours later, most of the group had gone to rest. Only Seraphine remained in the library. She carefully closed another dusty journal. A yawn escaped her. You should sleep. Lucien stood in the doorway, carrying 2 steaming mugs. I brought cinnamon milk. She smiled. My weakness. I noticed. You've been paying attention. I have. He handed her one of the mugs. Their paws brushed. Neither pulled away immediately. The library was quiet. Peaceful. Outside, soft rain began falling against the stained glass windows. I've been wondering something, Seraphine said. What? Why did you really come to Bellaflora? Lucien looked into his mug. For the first time since they'd met, he hesitated. Not because he didn't know the answer. Because he wasn't sure whether to tell it. Finally, he met her eyes. The truth. I'd prefer it. I came because. He smiled sheepishly. My grandmother told me I was about to meet the cat who would change my life. Seraphine blinked. She said that. She usually predicts weather. And she's annoyingly accurate. Seraphine laughed softly. So, You traveled across 2 kingdoms because your grandmother gave you romantic advice? Lucien sighed dramatically. When you say it like that, it sounds ridiculous. It really does. Neither noticed. The ancient bookshelf behind them had begun to glow. One dusty book slowly slid outward on its own. Then another. Then another. A hidden compartment quietly opened. Inside, an old crystal key shimmered with the exact same silver light as the moon veil petal. Neither of them had seen it. Yet, rain tapped gently against the towering stained-glass windows. The royal library smelled of parchment, fresh cinnamon, and old stories. Lucien leaned comfortably against one of the oak bookshelves. Seraphine warmed her paws around the steaming mug. Neither seemed eager to end the conversation. So, Seraphine smiled. Your grandmother predicts the weather. And apparently my future. Also true. Is she always right? Lucien thought for a moment. Unfortunately, when I was 8, she told me I'd fall into a river before sunset. You didn't believe her. I laughed. And I fell into the river. Seraphine giggled. An hour later, were you rescued? I wasn't drowning. So why did you need rescuing? I refused to admit I couldn't swim back. She laughed harder. You sound very stubborn. I prefer optimistically committed. Their laughter echoed softly through the empty library. Hidden behind them, the ancient bookshelf shifted, almost silently. A faint silver glow seeped through the gaps between dusty books. Neither of them noticed. Elsewhere in the palace, Queen Eleanor quietly passed the library doors. She slowed. Inside, she heard laughter. She smiled knowingly. King Orion approached from the opposite corridor. You've stopped walking. Listen. He did. Lucien was in the middle of another story. And that's how the goose stole my lunch. Seraphine laughed. So hard, she had to set her mug down. The king smiled. I haven't heard the library sound this alive in years. Neither royal interrupted. They simply continued walking. Back inside, Seraphine wandered toward a towering shelf labeled Ancient Botanical Records. Lucien followed. I thought you were looking for Moonvale history. I was. So why flowers? Because thieves hide things where nobody thinks to look. He smiled. I like the way you think. As Seraphine reached for an old leather-bound volume, the entire bookshelf trembled. Just once. Both of them froze. Did you feel that? Lucien nodded slowly. I definitely did. Another soft click echoed through the room. Then another. Ancient gears hidden within the walls slowly awakened. Dust drifted lazily through shafts of moonlight. The bookshelf began sliding sideways. Neither of them touched it. Behind it, a narrow stone alcove emerged. Inside, resting upon a velvet cushion, lay a crystal key. It glowed with the same gentle silver light as the moon veil petal. The same crescent moon was engraved near its handle. Lucien whispered. Impossible. Seraphine looked at him. You've seen it before. He slowly shook his head. I've only read about it. What is it? He stepped closer. The Linares key. The stories say it was forged by the first guardians of Bellaflora. It was believed to have vanished hundreds of years ago. The key suddenly floated into the air. Neither of them moved. It hovered quietly, turning once, twice, as though searching. Then, it drifted toward Seraphine. Lucien instinctively stepped between them. Wait! The key stopped, floating inches from his face. For one tense heartbeat, nothing happened. Then it gently moved around him, continuing toward Seraphine. I don't think, she whispered. It wants to hurt anyone. Lucien remained cautious. Maybe not. The crystal key slowly lowered itself, until it rested, perfectly, in Seraphine's waiting paw. The moment her fingers closed around it, the library erupted in silver light. Ancient symbols raced across the stone floor. Books flew open on their own. Shelves vibrated. Every candle burst into brilliant flame. A soft wind circled the room, though every window remained closed. Images appeared in the light. Not memories. Visions. A magnificent city hidden beneath flowering trees. Ancient guardians standing around a glowing crystal. 3 enormous stone gates, each sealed by brilliant magic. Then, darkness spreading beneath them like ink. One gate cracked. Then another. Only one remained untouched. The vision ended as suddenly as it had begun. The library fell silent once more. Seraphine stared at the key. What was that? Lucien answered quietly. I think. The key just showed us why the star heart was stolen. Before either could speak again, a voice came from the doorway. You found it. They turned sharply. Alaric stood there, fully dressed, calm as ever, though his expression revealed genuine surprise. I've searched for that key for years. You knew it was here? Lucien asked. I suspected, but the legends all agreed on one thing. He looked directly at Seraphine. The Linares key cannot be found. It chooses. Lucien looked from the key to Seraphine, then back again. So, he said with a crooked smile. It likes you. She smiled. I hope it has good taste. It definitely does. The words escaped before he could stop them. Silence. Lucien blinked. I keep doing that. Seraphine's cheeks warmed. I noticed. Before either could recover, a sharp crack echoed through the room. One of the stained glass windows shattered inward. A dark cloaked figure landed silently on the library floor. Then another. Then a third. Each wore a porcelain mask marked with a silver crescent moon. None drew weapons. None spoke. The leader simply looked at Seraphine, and at the crystal key in her paw. Then, in a calm, almost respectful voice, the masked stranger said, "Thank you. You've just found the final piece for us." Chapter 10, into Whispering Hollow. The voice faded, not because it had finished speaking, but because it no longer needed to. Every candle in the library extinguished at once. Only the Linares key remained aglow, casting gentle silver light across the room. No one dared speak. Even the rain outside had stopped. Then, the Marquis whispered, "I preferred the goose." Lucien couldn't stop a small laugh. "I think we all did." The tension eased just enough for everyone to breathe again. King Orion straightened. Everyone remained calm. The captain of the guard immediately barked orders. "Secure every entrance. Double the palace watch. No one leaves without authorization." Within seconds, armored guards hurried through the corridors. The masked leader of the Moonveil Society remained perfectly still. "We're out of time." Alaric looked at them sharply. "Explain. The voice you heard hasn't escaped." "Not yet." Lucien folded his arms. "But it's awake." "Yes. And someone is helping it." The leader nodded once. "Unfortunately." Seraphine looked down at the glowing key. "It keeps getting warmer." Lucien gently examined it without taking it from her. "It isn't reacting to danger. It's reacting to..." He paused. "Direction." The key slowly rotated in Seraphine's paw. Its tip pointed toward the eastern windows, toward the forests beyond Bellaflora. "Whispering Hollow," Alaric said quietly. The Moonveil leader nodded. "It wants you there." King Orion looked around the library. "If this truly is our only lead..." He took a slow breath. "Then we leave before sunrise." Prince Rowan immediately stepped forward. "I'll assemble 100 knights." "No." Lucien answered instantly. The room turned toward him. "If an army marches into Whispering Hollow, the entire forest will know. The people waiting for us will know. They'll disappear before we arrive." Alaric nodded. "He's right." Duke Caspian studied the map still lying open on the table. "So, a small group." Lucien smiled. "Exactly." The Marquis raised his paw enthusiastically. "I volunteer." Prince Rowan sighed. "We assumed. I've already packed snacks." "When?" "I packed them during the scary voice." Everyone blinked. "You packed during the apocalypse." "I get hungry under pressure." Even Alaric laughed. Again, Lucien looked at him. "You've laughed twice tonight." "I'll deny it." King Orion finally made his decision. "The expedition will consist of..." He looked around the room. "Prince Lucien, Crown Prince Alaric, Lady Seraphine, Prince Rowan, Duke Caspian, the Marquis, the Moonveil Guide, and 6 royal rangers. No more." The captain frowned. "Your Majesty, is that wise?" King Orion smiled faintly. "No, but it feels correct." Hours later, the palace slowly settled into uneasy silence. Most of the kingdom slept, unaware that its greatest treasure had vanished, unaware that something ancient had awakened beneath the mountains, unaware that 7 unlikely companions would leave before dawn. Seraphine stood alone on her balcony. The stars reflected in the palace lake below. Usually, the view comforted her. Tonight, her thoughts refused to settle. Footsteps approached quietly behind her. She didn't need to turn. "You couldn't sleep either." Lucien smiled. "I tried. And I counted sheep. We're cats. I counted rabbits." She laughed softly. "There you are again. My favorite laugh." He scratched the back of his neck. "I was hoping you'd forgotten." "I haven't." For a comfortable moment, they stood together beneath the stars. Neither rushed to fill the silence. Finally, Seraphine spoke. "Are you afraid?" Lucien considered the question honestly. "Yes." She looked surprised. "I thought princes weren't supposed to admit that." "They're probably not. So why tell me?" He looked at the moon. "Because pretending I'm fearless won't protect anyone." His sapphire eyes met hers. "I'd rather be honest." She smiled. "I like honest." "I was hoping you would." A cool breeze drifted through the balcony garden. One tiny moon blossom suddenly opened. Then another. Then dozens. Lucien frowned. "They only bloom after midnight." Seraphine knelt beside them. "They're blooming toward the forest." The flowers weren't facing the moon. They were all turned east, toward Whispering Hollow. The Linares key pulsed again. Once. Twice. Then projected a tiny image above Seraphine's palm. A single silver fox. It looked around impatiently, then trotted east. After several steps, it paused, looked back at them, as if waiting. Lucien smiled. "I think we've just been given a guide." The little fox wagged its fluffy tail, then vanished into sparkling silver dust. Just before sunrise, the palace gates slowly opened. Morning mist rolled across the cobblestones. 7 travelers waited beside their horses. The Moonveil Guide remained masked. Prince Rowan adjusted his cloak. Duke Caspian secured the expedition maps. The Marquis proudly unveiled an enormous backpack. Lucien stared. "How many snacks did you pack?" The Marquis smiled. "Enough for courage. That's not a measurement. It is emotionally." Seraphine mounted her horse. As she did, she looked back toward Bellaflora Castle. For reasons she couldn't explain, she had the strange feeling that when she returned, nothing would ever be the same again. High above them, hidden among the clouds, a pair of golden eyes watched the expedition leave. The mysterious observer smiled. So, they found the key. A second cloaked figure stepped from the shadows. Shall we stop them? The first figure slowly shook their head. No. Let them open the path. They'll save us months of searching. Far below, unaware they were being watched, the 7 companions disappeared into the ancient pastel forest, following a trail that hadn't been walked in hundreds of years. And somewhere deep within Whispering Hollow, something was already waiting for them. The ancient forest welcomed no one. It simply watched. Morning sunlight filtered through towering silverwood trees, painting the winding path with soft patches of gold and pastel green. Not a single bird sang. Not a single insect buzzed. The silence felt intentional. The 7 companions followed the silver fox projected by the Linares key. It appeared only for a few moments at a time, running ahead, stopping, looking back impatiently, then disappearing into glittering silver particles before reappearing farther down the trail. The Marquis scratched his head. I think it enjoys making us exercise. Prince Rowan smiled. I think you're right. I already missed the palace. You've been walking for 12 minutes. I'm emotionally exhausted. Seraphine laughed. Lucien glanced toward her. There it is again. My laugh. My favorite sound. She smiled without looking at him. You really aren't subtle. I've accepted that. Alaric, walking a few paces ahead, spoke without turning around. No, you haven't. Everyone chuckled. Even Lucien. Hours passed. The deeper they traveled, the stranger the forest became. Trees slowly changed color. Soft mint green, leaves faded into pale lavender. The flowers glowed, faintly beneath the shade. Crystal streams flowed uphill instead of down. Nothing felt dangerous, yet everything reminded them. They were somewhere ancient. Suddenly, the silver fox stopped. Its ears perked. Then, it vanished. At the same moment, the Linares key grew warm. Very warm. Seraphine instinctively held it tighter. It stopped. Lucien looked around. So did the wind. He was right. The leaves no longer moved. The streams no longer flowed. Even the drifting flower petals had frozen in midair. Time itself seemed to hesitate. Then, a voice echoed through the trees. Not threatening. Not kind. Merely curious. Who seeks the hollow? No one answered immediately. The voice came again. Speak truthfully. Lucien stepped forward. We seek the star heart. Silence. Then, many have sought it. We seek to return it. Another pause. That answer is different. The ground shimmered. Dozens of glowing vines emerged from beneath the moss. Instead of attacking, they intertwined gracefully, forming an enormous circular archway of flowers and crystal branches. Beyond it, the forest changed completely. A hidden valley stretched before them. Pastel waterfalls cascaded from floating cliffs. Ancient stone bridges crossed glowing rivers. Cherry blossom trees bloomed in every imaginable shade of pink, lavender, and white. Crystal butterflies drifted lazily through the air. It was breathtaking. The Marquis whispered, I'm never leaving. In the center of the valley stood a forgotten city. Its marble buildings were wrapped in flowering vines instead of ruin. Its fountains still flowed. Its gardens still bloomed. It looked less abandoned, and more patient. Seraphine slowly walked forward. This place. It feels alive. It is. Everyone turned. An elderly cat emerged from between 2 flowering trees. She wore simple robes the color of pale moss. Long silver fur framed a gentle face lined with age and wisdom. She carried a polished wooden staff adorned with tiny crystal blossoms. The moon-veil guide immediately bowed. Keeper! The elderly cat inclined her head. You've brought them. Her warm amber eyes settled on Seraphine. So, the key finally chose. Seraphine instinctively looked at the Linares key. You know about it? The keeper smiled. I helped hide it. Lucien blinked. How old are you? She smiled mischievously. My mother taught the first gardeners of Bellaflora. The Marquis quietly whispered to Duke Caspian. That's older than my favorite cookie recipe. The keeper laughed. I heard that. She gestured toward the ancient city. Come. You've traveled far. You deserve breakfast before destiny. The Marquis immediately brightened. I knew this place was magical. A short while later, the companions gathered around a long stone table beneath flowering trees. Fresh bread, berry preserves, warm cinnamon pastries, honey cakes, herbal tea. The atmosphere felt surprisingly peaceful. Almost like home. Lucien looked around. If this city still exists, why hide it? The keeper's smile slowly faded. Because this is where the first king sleeps. Silence returned. She continued quietly. Not beneath the city. She looked toward a mountain rising behind the valley. Inside it, every eye followed her gaze. Halfway up the mountainside, 3 enormous stone doors were carved into the cliff face. The first hung open. The second lay shattered. The third still shimmered with ancient silver magic, but only barely. Hairline cracks spread slowly across its surface, like ice breaking on a winter lake. The keeper closed her eyes. We're too late. A deep rumble rolled through the valley. The final seal cracked again. A second crack echoed across Whispering Hollow. Then a third. The mountain trembled. Tiny fragments of glowing crystal broke away from the final seal, scattering like falling stars across the valley floor. No one spoke. The keeper lowered her head. We've lost centuries. Lucien stepped toward the mountain. Can it still be repaired? The keeper didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked at Seraphine. The key. Seraphine raised the Linares key. Its silver glow had become brighter, warmer, almost urgent. The key was never made to lock the prison, the keeper said softly. It was made to choose who would decide its fate. Seraphine frowned. I don't understand. You will. Suddenly, the peaceful valley changed. The flowers folded shut. Crystal butterflies scattered into the sky. The waterfalls stopped flowing. Every guardian in the hidden city looked toward the mountain. Fear spread across their faces. One whispered, He's coming. The mountain shook violently. Boom. The first stone pillar beside the great doors shattered. Boom. Another followed. The glowing cracks raced across the final seal like lightning. The Moonveil leader stepped beside Lucien. We have to reach the altar. What altar? The one behind the final gate. Prince Rowan looked toward the enormous stone doors. Behind that? Yes. The Starheart must be returned before the seal breaks. And if it breaks first? Nobody answered. The Marquis slowly raised a paw. I don't enjoy unanswered questions. The keeper finally looked at him. If it breaks first, there won't be another sunrise. The Marquis swallowed. That's a very bad answer. Without another word, everyone ran. Ancient stone steps wound up the mountainside. The climb was steep. The air grew colder with every step. The Linares key projected the silver fox again. It sprinted ahead, turning whenever the path forked, leading them flawlessly. Halfway up the mountain, dark figures emerged from the trees. Not monsters, not soldiers, cats wearing silver masks. Dozens of them. Moonveil. The leader stepped forward. The path is clear. Lucien frowned. You aren't stopping us. We were never meant to. You were buying time. The leader nodded. For you. Suddenly, an explosion rocked the mountainside. Everyone looked upward. A second group of cloaked figures had appeared above them. Unlike Moonveil, their cloaks were crimson. Their masks were black crystal. One of them held the glowing Starheart crystal. The Marquis pointed. They've got the shiny thing. Lucien's expression hardened. They're the real thieves. The crimson leader laughed. So, the princes finally understand. He raised the Starheart high above his head. Thank you for finding the key. The final seal cannot be opened without both. Seraphine tightened her grip on the Linares key. So that's why you've been following us. The stranger bowed mockingly. You've been wonderfully helpful. Prince Rowan drew his sword. Give it back. The crimson leader smiled. No. With a single motion, he thrust the Starheart into a crystal socket carved into the mountain. The entire cliff erupted with golden light. The final seal began glowing. Not stronger, weaker. The enormous doors slowly started opening. Stone grinding against stone echoed for miles. No! The keeper cried. Lucien sprinted toward the doors. Seraphine beside him. The others followed. The gap widened. A cold wind rushed out from inside the mountain. Not ordinary wind. Ancient wind. It carried whispers. Thousands of them. Voices from another age. Then, a paw appeared, resting calmly against the inside of the opening doors. Elegant. Unmoving. Then another. Slowly, a tall figure stepped into the light. He wore ancient royal robes embroidered with stars. A magnificent crown rested upon silver hair. His expression was calm. Gentle. Almost. Kind. His golden eyes slowly opened. He looked at the sky, smiled, and quietly said, How beautiful the world has become. No one moved. This was the first king. He didn't look like a monster. He looked like a beloved ruler returning home. He looked at the companions one by one. His gaze settled on Seraphine. Then Lucien. His smile deepened. You've done exactly as I hoped. Lucien stepped protectively in front of Seraphine. The first king chuckled softly. Do not be afraid. His voice was warm, comforting, almost impossible to distrust. I have no wish to harm my people. Then, his golden eyes briefly flashed crimson. So quickly, only Seraphine noticed. And in that single heartbeat, she understood, whatever kindness remained, was only a mask. The first king smiled. It was the smile of a ruler who had welcomed thousands into his court. Warm, gentle, reassuring. Every instinct told Seraphine to trust him. Yet, those brief crimson eyes refused to leave her thoughts. Something was terribly wrong. The ancient king stepped fully beyond the broken seal. His robes drifted as though carried by an invisible breeze. Golden flowers bloomed beneath every step. The valley itself seemed to celebrate his return. He looked around with quiet wonder. The gardens, they've become even more beautiful. The keeper lowered her gaze. She did not answer. The first king noticed. You remember me. I remember who you were. She replied. A shadow crossed his face. Not who I am. No. Silence. The ancient ruler sighed sadly. That is unfortunate. He looked toward Lucien. You stand between me and the young lady. Lucien didn't move. I do. Why? Because she deserves the choice of whether to stand near you. The first king studied him. Then, he smiled again. You speak like a true prince. He turned towards Seraphine. My child, my name is Seraphine. Of course. I've slept for many centuries. I've forgotten many things. His voice was gentle, but I remember one truth. What truth? Every ruler exists to protect those who cannot protect themselves. She searched his eyes. If that's true, why were you imprisoned? The valley fell silent. Even the crimson-cloaked thieves watched. The first king looked toward the mountains. A wistful smile crossed his face. History is rarely written by those who lose. The crimson leader stepped forward. Your Majesty, we fulfilled our promise. The star heart has been returned. The first king nodded approvingly. You have served faithfully. The thieves smiled proudly. Then, without warning, golden vines erupted from the ground, wrapping around every member of the Crimson Order. What? My king, we served you. The vines tightened. The first king's smile never changed. You served your purpose. Golden lights surged through the vines. One by one, the crimson masks crumbled into dust. Their magical energy flowed directly into the first king. Within seconds, the valley was silent again. The thieves were gone. Only empty cloaks remained on the ground. The Marquis stared. I take back every nice thing I almost thought about him. Lucien's expression hardened. You used them. They volunteered. They trusted you. They believed. The first king looked almost puzzled. Faith always requires sacrifice. No, Lucien replied firmly. Leadership does. For the first time, the first king's smile faded. Only slightly. You are different from the kings I remember. I hope so, Lucien answered. The ancient ruler slowly turned towards Seraphine again. The key chose you. Yes. It has excellent judgment. She didn't smile. What do you want from me? The same thing I've always wanted. And what's that? A perfect kingdom. He stretched one paw toward her. No hunger. No sickness. No war. No loneliness. His voice became almost hypnotic. I can build such a world. You need only give me the key. For one dangerous heartbeat, the valley became quiet. Images formed around Seraphine. A peaceful Bellaflora. Children laughing. Families reunited. Gardens blooming forever. No suffering. No grief. It was everything anyone could wish for. Lucien quietly reached for her paw. Not to pull her away. Not to stop her. Simply to remind her she wasn't alone. Their fingers intertwined. The illusion flickered. The first king's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. Interesting. Seraphine looked from the beautiful vision to Lucien. His expression wasn't pleading. He wasn't telling her what to choose. He trusted her. Completely. She looked back at the first king. It's beautiful. It is. But, she smiled sadly. It isn't real. The perfect kingdom shattered like glass. The illusion vanished. For the first time in centuries, the first king's calm expression cracked. His golden eyes flashed crimson again. Longer this time. You refuse paradise. I refuse a paradise where no one is free. The mountain trembled violently. Dark energy burst from the star heart. The flowers surrounding the valley began to wilt. The sky darkened. The first king's voice echoed like thunder. So be it. His royal robes dissolved into swirling shadows and golden light. Ancient magic erupted around him. The air became almost impossible to breathe. The kind ruler was gone. Only the immortal tyrant remained. You shall witness why history once called me the Eternal King. Golden storms exploded across Whispering Hollow. Lucien stepped beside Seraphine. Prince Rowan drew his sword. Duke Caspian raised his enchanted shield. Alaric calmly unsheathed his blade. The keeper lifted her crystal staff. The Marquis tightened the straps on his enormous backpack. Lucien blinked. You're carrying a frying pan? The Marquis nodded. I packed snacks. I also packed confidence. And he triumphantly pulled out the heavy cast-iron pan. This, despite the impossible danger. Seraphine laughed. Lucien smiled. There it is. My favorite sound. The Eternal King looked at them with genuine confusion. Even now, facing the greatest threat in history, they could still laugh together. He had ruled through fear. He suddenly realized that was a language they no longer spoke. Golden lightning split the sky. Ancient magic roared through Whispering Hollow. The Eternal King stood at the summit, surrounded by a storm of shimmering gold and shadow. His voice echoed across the valley. Kneel! The mountains trembled. Trees bent beneath the weight of his power. Even seasoned knights struggled to remain standing. Only one cat refused to move. Seraphine. The Linares key blazed with silver light. It wasn't fighting the Eternal King. It was waiting. The keeper smiled through tears. Now, it finally understands. Lucien looked toward her. Understands what? The key was never created to choose the strongest. It chooses the kindest heart. The Eternal King laughed. Kindness. You think kindness builds kingdoms? It builds homes. Seraphine answered quietly. Fear builds prisons. With a wave of his paw, golden chains shot toward her. Lucien threw himself between them. The chains wrapped around him instead. hurling him across the stone courtyard. Lucien! He crashed against an ancient pillar. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. Seraphine ran to him. She dropped to her knees beside him. Lucien! He winced. I've definitely had better mornings. Even now. He smiled. She laughed through frightened tears. You always joke. It helps. He reached up, gently brushing a tear from her cheek. I didn't want you crying. The Eternal King watched in silence, confused. Why? Why would a prince throw himself into danger? There had been no advantage, no strategy, only love. It was something he had forgotten centuries ago. Lucien looked into Seraphine's emerald eyes. I don't know if we'll get another chance. She knew exactly what he meant. He took a slow breath. I came here because my grandmother said I'd meet someone who would change my life. He smiled weakly. She was wrong. Seraphine frowned. She was. You didn't change my life. You became it. Everything around them disappeared. The battle. The storm. The shouting. It was just the two of them. I love you, Seraphine. I've loved you since the gardens. He laughed softly. Needed a ridiculously dangerous adventure to admit it. Seraphine's eyes filled with tears. Not of sadness. Of relief. She rested her forehead against his. I thought I was the only one. You've been impossible to stop thinking about. She smiled. I love you too. I think. I started falling for the gardener. Lucien laughed. The gardener was hoping that. She gently cupped his face. Then, with the entire valley watching, she kissed him. Softly, tenderly, not rushed, not dramatic, simply, honest. The Linares key exploded with silver light. The Eternal King staggered backward. What? The Starheart crystal answered. Its golden glow slowly transformed into brilliant silver. Flowers across Whispering Hollow burst into bloom. The darkness surrounding the mountain dissolved. The keeper smiled. Of course. The key wasn't waiting for power. It was waiting for trust. The Eternal King looked at his own hands. His magic was disappearing. No. I built perfection. No. Seraphine answered. You built obedience. Love can't be commanded. It has to be chosen. The Starheart floated free from the mountain altar. It drifted gently toward Seraphine. She looked at Lucien. He nodded. She understood. Instead of claiming its power, she placed the crystal back into its ancient sanctuary, exactly where it belonged. The mountain glowed brilliantly. The final seal closed. Not like a prison, like a peaceful farewell. The Eternal King looked at the restored kingdom one last time. The anger left his eyes. Only sadness remained. I wanted to protect them forever. Seraphine smiled gently. I know, but every garden has to trust spring will come again. The ancient king closed his eyes. For the first time in 1,000 years, he let go. His body dissolved into thousands of golden flower petals. The wind carried them across Whispering Hollow. Then, he was gone. Sunlight broke through the clouds. The waterfalls began flowing again. Crystal butterflies returned. The valley bloomed brighter than ever before. The Starheart pulsed peacefully within its shrine. Bellaflora's magic had been restored. Weeks later, the Moon Blossom Festival returned. This time, no stolen relics, no mass societies, no ancient kings, just music, lanterns, laughter, and dancing. The Marquis was already at the dessert table. I've learned something. Prince Rowan smiled. What's that? You can't save the world on an empty stomach. Duke Caspian laughed. I'll allow it. Queen Eleanor watched from the palace balcony. They're happy. King Orion nodded. They earned it. In the moonlit gardens, Lucien found Seraphine standing beside the same flower bed where they had first met. He walked beside her. No disguises this time. She teased. I retired from gardening. That's a shame. I like the gardener. So did I. He reached into his coat. Not for a royal decree. Not for a crown. For a small velvet box. Inside rested a delicate silver ring shaped like intertwining moonflowers. Simple. Elegant. Perfectly her. Lucien smiled. I don't want to rush you. I don't want politics deciding our future. I just want to ask one question. He took her paw. Will you let me spend the rest of my life making you laugh? Seraphine pretended to think. You do tell excellent goose stories. I have several more. And you still owe me a rematch over Moon Basil. I was hoping you'd say that. She smiled, tears sparkling in her eyes. Yes. Yes, I'll spend the rest of my life with you. He slipped the ring onto her paw. The gardens erupted into glowing moon blossoms. Lanterns floated into the night sky. Fireworks blossomed above Bellaflora Castle in soft pastel pinks, blues, and golds. From somewhere nearby, the Marquis shouted. I knew they'd finally kiss. Everyone laughed. Even Alaric, though he would later insist he hadn't. Lucien wrapped an arm around Seraphine as they watched the fireworks paint the sky. She rested her head against his shoulder. So, she whispered, do you still lose arguments to geese? Lucien grinned. Only the very confident ones. She laughed, his favorite sound. And under a sky full of glowing lanterns, their story wasn't remembered as the tale of an ancient king. It became the story of two honest hearts who chose each other. The end.